I guess she's on her way in.
Okay.
Hangout
Is
on
Nicole
air
here tonight?
live. Nicole, I don't know about. And look, Nicole Leonie, I don't know about.
Who's
Uh,
here?
I don't, huh?
Who's here? Who's coming? Is it the only coming?
Geo. I think Geo.
Gio. Okay.
Nicole had various conferences and stuff going on in April, so um,
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is one of the days that she said. I thought last week she was not going to be here, and then she was.
Okay. Okay.
So, um, you know, so maybe this week is the week she's not going to be here. And Leonie, I haven't heard from. She may be traveling.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of had a busy schedule. So I don't know. You guys want to give it a couple of more minutes?
We give
We
it two
were.
minutes, I guess. What you think, Kim?
Sure. 2 minutes is
How's your
fine.
daughter? How's your daughter? I meant to ask you. How's your daughter?
Coming along.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that.
It's coming along. I'll tell you something funny. As long as we have this minute, she
Okay.
was. I was. She was giving me some change, and I said to her, "How do I get this amount of change?" So she was just like, "What are you trying to say? I'm stealing from you?" And I was saying, "No, I want to understand how you got to hand me this kind of money. Just give me an explanation." And she got so upset, and she was just like, "I can't believe you think I'm a thief." And I said to her, "But that's because you stole from me."
Oh.
I said,
You did not
I
say
said,
that,
once
Kim.
you
You
put your
did
hand in
not.
mama's pocketbook now, you know, things change. And I said, I'm glad that you're upset by this, because if you weren't upset by it, then you'd have a bigger problem. So
Right.
I'm real happy that she is so apologetic and so upset that, she wanted this cell phone so bad until she decided that she would take some of my money to get it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Kim,
oh, I
stop.
didn't know we were live. I'm sorry. Don't ask this part, Michelle.
Is she still among the living?
This was some time ago, so I was saying all that to say that it has been wonderful watching her mea culpa. I think it's grown her up in some way, shape, or form that I don't think anything else would have been able to do.
Uh-huh.
Good.
So something about her has matured since the incident.
Okay.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling when
Who
you
has the
see.
new grandbaby?
Huh?
I was asking Venita, how's her new grandbaby?
Oh,
Oh.
which which one? My niece children. There's so many. Wesley is good. He's the my daughter-in-law's sister's little boy Wesley. He'll be a year old in May. He's doing well. That's the last one I think so far.
Oh, good.
Leonie,
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey,
how you
Leonie.
doing?
Hello. Good. How are you?
Very good.
Good. You still traveling?
Yeah, I'm staying with my friends in Akron.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ohio. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you like it there?
It's good. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Having a good time. Getting lots of rest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so
All right. Wow. Well, maybe we should go on. I don't know. It appeared. Oh,
oh,
here's
here's
G
Gino.
Mose.
Hey,
Oh,
ladies.
hi,
Hello.
How
Hi.
you
G.
doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
All right. So I saw you saw the save the date notice, Gio,
Yes.
in the
So,
private group. So okay.
right. And that it's an
So
hour early. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's gonna be on time.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to be on time.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, Kim, I guess we may as well go ahead and get started because I don't know the story with Nicole.
Okay. So why don't we go around and say hello? Michelle, you want to start?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Odom. I am located in Brooklyn, New York, and I have a hard copy of our current reading, Here Comes the Sun. Welcome.
That's a hard copy?
It's a soft cover hard copy. and let me tell you, can you see all the writing on my pages?
Mm-hmm. Okay, you've been studying that book. Okay.
Beat down.
Your book looks worn. It looks so worn, Michelle.
Through it.
Venita, you want to say hi?
Yes, good evening. My name is Venita Walker, and I'm joining you from Cromwell, Connecticut. And I have a copy of the book also.
Let's see. Can we see your book again, Venita?
Welcome.
Is that what that's what it's supposed to look like?
That looks brand new. Yeah. Did you read it?
Well, no, actually, I
great
did. I have,
condition.
but see, I don't write. See how my writing? But see,
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So Michelle, you need to take better care of your books, darling.
Michelle's not playing to pass it along. It's not going on.
No.
Definitely not.
Leonie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Leonie Smith, and I usually join you from Toronto, but I'm on the road and joining you from Akron, Ohio today.
Welcome. You have your book with you?
I have my phone copy. I don't travel with physical copies.
Good idea. And Gio, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, hey, my name is Georgette Moses, and I'm joining you guys from Columbia, South Carolina. And here's my digital copy. And hopefully I'll be able to pass it along because I'm not making no notations in this. No.
That's the fun of it.
Okay, Michelle. Okay.
So the lesson here is don't loan your books to Michelle. And I'm Kim Brandon, and I'm in New York. And tonight we are reading Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn. And we are going to go over chapters 33 and 37 tonight. And so I guess we'll get started with the summary. Did I miss anything, Michelle?
All right. No, just a reminder to Leonie, you're up next week.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay. Summary. The bulldozers come to Riverbank, and it is during Miss Ruby's rant of telling them to keep away from her house that an earthquake shakes the ground and all destruction is held off. The community gathers at Macca's to talk when Verdine decides that this is her moment. She will not be run off again by anyone. When asked to leave, she encourages Macca to focus on who is truly at fault here and who is not. As Dolores searches for eucalyptus leaves for a bath that she hopes will restore and fix Thandi, Margot shares her sorrow with her sister. She opens up about being sold for $600 and how nothing Dolores did ever worked to restore Margot to her days prior to having an attraction to Verdine. Margot confesses that the cure stripped her of having a self, only to discover that with her best efforts, Thandi was not protected and that it was someone they had invited into their home that hurt Thandi. Both Margot and Dolores struggled with what happened to Thandi under their protective eyes. At Margot's promptings, Verdine has decided to sell her home without legal counsel. Verdine so wants the happy ending that Margot is promising, but something stinks, like rotting flesh in the walls. When Verdine is told that the parent company that is not named in the contract is owned by Margot's boss, that is when the stench of betrayal points to her lover, Margot. Finally, Thandi is lost without Charles, and in her search to find him, she finds out about a new pimp named Boss Lady. Thandi hopes that Boss Lady will lead her to Sweetness, who might lead her to Charles. And questions. Would somebody like to read the first question and the two points underneath it?
I can do that.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Leonie.
You're welcome. Miss Ruby stands on her front porch and refuses.
Leonie, can you adjust your camera a little bit?
Sorry, yes. I don't usually have I can't actually see myself, so just give me one moment.
Okay.
There we go.
That's better.
Great. Miss Ruby stands on her front porch and refuses to allow the destruction of her home. Do you recall a time or a woman who stood out front and pushed back on progress that would have retarded her community, family, home? What comes to mind as Miss Ruby, while attempting to protect her home, is seen as ghostly with her salmon skin, given the treatment she's been peddling, where supposed to lift one up and out of being poor and powerless?
Thank you. Anybody want to start us off?
Actually, yes. I don't recall a woman. However, I was actually confronted with this same type of situation recently where I've been fighting the town hall for like 3 years. Our town has changed tremendously, and a developer wanted to take a piece of open land. There's a lot of farms that were here, and build a housing unit of 86 units. And we already have a lot of condos that are here, as you know, without having additional ones put here. And it just would have been very good for the community. So me and another neighbor got together, emailed, and also connected with neighbors on Facebook, organized. So when we went to the town, we were prepared to fight the developer. Make a long story short, we did win. We won. Actually, it was twice we had to fight him. He came back with one plan. We fought him and won. A year later, he came back with another plan. We fought him and won. And so finally he gave up.
Wow.
But once again, power was in numbers. I have to say that we were surprised. We had a 300 and more person turnout. And usually at the town halls, although you may have 16,000 people in the town, you don't really have that large of a turnout. Of course, people fight for what's in their better interests. And I think some of that was also too because people aren't always aware of what's going on because of their busy lives. So I do believe by making them aware of what's going on and presenting the facts to them and the negative impact it would have on the town, we were able to present ourselves well and defeat the developer. So I was really happy about that.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? That question or the next question?
I guess I'll look at question B, 1B. What comes to mind? Well, I like the question because you're right. You know, Miss Ruby has been peddling this potion, this process for who knows how long. And if it really worked, you know, if it really got the kind of results she said it did, then she'd be a living example of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it would seem like the fact that she's not a living example of it would be enough to make people pause, you know, about following her advice. So I'm just curious about why people believe what they believe, and you know, why is it that in the face of, you know, cold hard evidence, they still believe whatever they want to believe. So I think that's interesting. But the rumor that Miss Ruby had, you know, worked some kind of voodoo or something that caused the construction worker to run away. I thought that part was kind of interesting. That, you know, that there kind of are still folks in the world who can believe, you know, that you know, by screaming a few words or whatever it is, shaking a leaf, whatever it is you did, that, you know, you might actually cause an earthquake. So again, people's beliefs are just fascinating.
Thanks, Michelle. It's funny. I think of Charlie Brown when Lucy is always promising not to pull the football out, and every time she pulls it out, and every time Charlie Brown falls on his back because she tricks him over and over again. And that's what the whole myth of race is in my mind. It's this thing that just kind of says, I don't care what y'all do, you're not getting any power. You know, we are going to keep the power. So you want to get as light as you possibly can, go ahead. But at the end of the day, when we're ready to take your land, we're going to come and take your land. And so it seems like sometimes, like Verdine was saying, we're not looking at keeping our eye on the right target, the right play. It's like if this was football, we're watching the wrong play because it's not about race. Race is such a myth, and to always get caught up in it and not look at the fact that it's the power brokers who are selling the myth of race to poor whites to enforce it is just heartbreaking for me. So that's when, you know, you see Miss Ruby lightening all these people's skin, and yeah, there's probably some little boy out there saying, yeah, my girlfriend look good now, you know. So it might you know make somebody aroused in some sort of way or feel better about themselves in some sort of way, but it's always that football going to be pulled out from underneath you. unless you pull together and get some real power. I don't think the skin whitening is going to do it.
Mm.
And the first part of the question, I like to see some of these millennial women, young ladies, that the one that went up and pulled down the Confederate flag, real bad with names. I think she was one of those sisters that stood her ground and said enough. And then there's another picture of a young lady in her 20s where she is just barehanded up against all of these riot gear police officers, and your heart just goes out for her, and you see her standing there alone because it's been enough.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two women who come to mind, and forgive me for not recalling their names.
Bree Newsom was the flag.
Anybody else on those questions? Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. I mean,
Right.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I'm not that familiar with that.
I guess on question A, though, I would say the first thing that came to mind to me for that was this young white woman. I don't know her name. Kim, I don't know if you ever saw the film called My Brooklyn.
Yes, I have.
Okay, and so that's written, produced, or something by this young white woman. And so I saw her telling her own story at one point where she was saying she's had to move several times around Brooklyn because of how the rents have gone up, in the neighborhood that she was living in. And so that's really what kind of motivated her to really take an extended look at what is happening here, a historical look. And so, that led to this film. So, I think there are all kinds of ways of pushing back. And her way is just trying to educate herself, to educate the public about this phenomena of gentrification. She tries to follow the money,
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Would someone like to read question number 2?
Is Nicole here?
It looks like it.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Nicole.
Okay,
We can
good,
hear
good. I
you,
made it. Oh
we
my
can't see
gosh.
you.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Computer. Okay, I made it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm picking up. Okay, I'm gonna mute and so I can see where we are.
Okay. Question 2. Would someone like to read that?
Okay, I'll read it for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Margot tells Thandi a part of her truth. Thandi tells Margot about her rape, and Dolores is confronted by Thandi, who demands answers to Margot's truth. Dolores also reveals pieces of her own story. And question A, you get the impression that these women are seeing each other for the very first time, the pain, the misery, and the truth. What is it that each one sees in the other, and do you think that they now see something different in themselves? And question B, if Thandi painted Dolores at this point, how would the image on the page change? Wow. And so for question A, And that's really a great question, because as I was reading that passage, I thought back about how, I guess one of us in our last meeting or so talked about how complicated these characters are. And there's really no good or bad character, because each one of them has flaws and different choices that have brought them to the point that they're in. And so unless you're standing, in their shoes or slides, how can you really judge? We're just looking at them from where we're sitting, and placed in the same position. We'd like to say that we do, make different choices. But these women, they're like onions. And the more you peel, you get below, the next, there's this other layer. Oh, and that's why they did that. No, here's a little bit of, mold or something. But that came because they sat out in the rain, or something happened to them to make them do the things that they did. And they make excuses to themselves to justify why they do or don't do something. There's a lot of blame going around, and not a lot of, oh, well, I understand this was wrong and I'm sorry that I did this to you. It's always, there's a reason why. Well, oh, such and such happened to me and that's why I'm doing it to you. And you get, a picture of some very desperate women. They are all desperate to survive, desperate to, one is, two are desperate for change, and one is desperate to maintain, that her head just above water, even though the water is rising and now it's just her nose is maybe up, and change is happening all around them and they can't stop it. The path they've chosen for themselves is not, is not perfect, but that's where they are. And so I think looking at, let's take Margot, for instance. Okay, so now we review. I know in the beginning I said, she didn't have the skills that she thought she did, but she doesn't she? She's got this survival instinct. When you look at this young lady, when she was a child, was given to a man for sexual favors, and the man came back and said, oh, she was great. How does a child be great at sex? Okay. And this is placed in her head, a man, the only man in her life, his opinion about her, her mother's opinion about her. This it creates her personality and how she thinks about herself. Oh, I'm only good for this one thing, even though I know I'm smart and I can figure out different things. How do I escape it? I fall into the same trap that was done to me. Now I'm using other people, to get above a place or reach that goal that I think is so great, which probably is not the best she could do, but that's all she can see because her definition of success is tainted by her past. We've got the same situation with Thandi here. Her definition of success has been given to her by somebody else. What's successful? Being light-skinned and becoming a doctor. Okay, maybe that's not success. You look at in school, the nun's opinion of her and the picture on the wall. Who the nuns represent, religious perfection, if you wanted to go that route. And she knows she can never reach that because the nuns are white, right? The picture on the wall is a white little girl, so that's who God loves. God doesn't look like me, so that's not my, that, how can I go that route? I'm being judged all the time, so I have to lie. She admits that she pretends to be someone she's not. And the only person she's comfortable with is Charles. You look at Dolores, and she started off as a child being molested. What is that? I mean, she was fat. She called herself fat. Kids can be fat if they want to. It's all right. They're not models. It's all right. But she's fat. And later on, you see she calls herself black and ugly. And she couldn't see in the picture that Thandi drew of her any redeeming quality. It was all the ugliness that she had called herself because she was molested. That was the problem. So she can't see anything else that's beautiful because that event in her life colored everything else, every other choice she would make. She explained to herself because she was ugly, she deserved what happened to her. So Margot deserved what happened to her when she did it. You know, she allowed it to happen. She instigated, you know, the prostitution of her daughter. But Margot deserved that because as a child, you know, she felt some kind of way, you know, she appreciated the attention someone gave her. Now, whether it was a boy or a girl, I think Dolores just used the fact that, oh, it's a woman, it's a female, and so that's against God, you know, religion. But if it had been anyone, she would have placed her daughter in this category because she already felt bad about herself. She couldn't feel good about another person because she didn't have any goodness in her life. And without those kind of examples, your definition of self is always going to be what somebody else has given you. So that's how I see that whole morass of, yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess, and it's based on things that happen to them, not being able to properly explain what happened to them, accepting the guilt of the situation, and instead of just saying, "Hey, that was their problem, but I don't have to be that way. It's not my fault." And then everything else they did was about that incident and compounding that into a further negative. So, and yeah, I think now for B, that Tandy's picture of Dolores would be wild-haired and bug-eyed and clutching with big long fingernails. It would be pretty bad. She'd have she'd draw Margot in one hand, you know, Dolores's huge hand clutching Margot's neck, and she'd draw herself in the other hand trying to get away. Yeah, it'd be a totally different picture now. Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Dr. Georgette.
Well, I hope it made me.
Fabio?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think
Nicole, introduce yourself, please, for the video.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Wilson. I am joining today from College Station, Texas. Thank you all for being very patient. I hope you all got my note about me having to come a little later. But to answer number 2, once the rape is revealed, and I love how Kim frames this, that the women are seeing each other for the very first time. And then to the question, what is it that they see? So I think, you know, there's this opportunity to see themselves and then to see themselves differently, right? So they are mirrors. And each of these women has been sexually assaulted, whether it's Thandi, Margot, and each of them has, you know, each of them has been deceptive in a sense. Each of them has been, you know, and can be violent. Each of them to different degrees we've seen. But we are seeing like a mirror images, reflections here. I think it's important because it cautions against, I mean, it confirms and then it cautions against like what happens when we make a home of each other, right? And so we make a home of each other and, you know, you kind of merge your subjectivities and that person's subjectivities are merged. And so on the one hand, that does something about communal, spaces, the communal. And then on the other hand, when the particulars, the specifics are missing, we could get into, a bit of trouble there. So I think, for example, Margot and Dolores are, in the sense of making a home of Thandi, the charge, that burden is too large. It's too much. It's too deep to support them. And then Thandi, what the things that Margot has to do for Thandi to remain in this school, to, do kind of repay the family, if you will. And the charge that Dolores has given both of the girls is just, it's understandable, kind of where they're coming from. But it's a huge, it's a burden. So I just think Dennis-Benn was just very strategic here in allowing us to see how complex this thing is, these slippages, if you will. And it clouds, our initial judgment, because if we were to juxtapose what happened at the beginning of the text, first chapter, versus now, like the things that we predicted, what we thought would happen, this text has taken a totally different turn. So anyway, I just think that's insightful. I think it speaks to her composition strategies, and this text has truly been a page turner.
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone else?
I do think that they are seeing each other differently for the first time, but I feel like it's taking one filter and it's been replaced with another filter that's a little bit clearer, but still not quite there. That they're not really seeing each other. I think it's a lot to unpack, a legacy of abuse and of abuse for being a woman, abuse for being a Black woman, coming from a place that is anchored in such a violent history. And that it makes me think that sometimes it may take more than one generation for women to see each other for who they really are. So yeah. So I think that the picture would be a different picture, but but it would probably not look too different from how it started off. They're getting closer to seeing each other, not yet seeing each other.
Thanks, Leonie.
I agree, Leonie. And I would just say, as I think Georgette said it earlier, there's a lot of blame going around, and I think that is why they're still not able to see each other, clearly. So Dolores, when she became pregnant by Uncle, her mother beat her, because it was like her mother was blaming her, a 16-year-old girl, for becoming pregnant by Uncle. And so that started her on the road of blaming Margot for being born and feeling like Margot owes her, you know. You know, and even Thandi, you know, as Margot was sharing her truth with Thandi, you know, Thandi, which I think is a very natural reaction, but still not a fully clear picture. You know, Thandi's reaction was, well, you weren't there to protect me, you know. So she's in a mode where, you know, she's blaming people, and they deserve some blame, but you know, because they did let him, you know, in their home. But yeah, it's that's one of the striking things to me about all of this blame going around, that I think that's really a common kind of problem, you know, single parents, single mothers, you know, I think often have a hard time looking at the child and not projecting all of their negative feelings for the child's father, you know, onto the child. And in Dolores and Marco's case, Thandi's father was attracted to Margot, right? So Dolores's attitude was, well, I can't do anything about that. You know, nevertheless, it's still a reason for her to feel like to blame Margot for this grown man's attraction to her teenage daughter. And so I think it's really important that we figure out where to correctly assess blame. It is a difficult task. You know, when Dolores and it was so shaken that Verdine had come into Dino's bar, and she said to her, "You're a bigger devil than the developers trying to take our homes." And I was like, really? You know, is that what you think, Dolores? You know, but so to me, that's just another example of, you know, you want to blame somebody for whatever is going on in your life, but it's really a little tricky to get it right.
Thank you, Michelle. It is. It feels like it's a level of internalized self-hatred that it may be easier to hate that which reminds you the most of you, you know, that a younger version of yourself, as opposed to having some agency and standing up for and calling out, as letting the chips fall where they may, of calling some people out. And this is not just, you know, in Jamaica. It's just everywhere that, you know, people don't call out, you know, perpetrators. They dance all around it, and all of a sudden, you know. But to really put the blame where it belongs, I think we're just starting to figure out how to do that. You know, with the sister who created the Me Too movement, that we can stop blaming each other and start looking at that there's some commonality amongst ourselves.
It reminds me too of Gino Diaz's piece. I don't know if anyone had a chance to read it, but he.
I did. That was powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it in the New Yorker?
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
So see if we can find a link for it. But he spoke about his own instance of being sexually assaulted and not telling anybody. And your question like makes me think like, what would it be like? And actually I'm going to say it a different way. I can't wait for a time, because this is actively the way that I live and the work that I'm doing, when we can speak to each other with such vulnerability that these women who have experienced abuse can actually see each other, to actually speak to the pain that they're having. Because there's still so many, even in the discovery, in the sharing of their different stories of abuse, there's still so much buried there, because that's the nature of sexual assault in this culture, in this kind of patriarchal culture, is that we never really get to speak to depth to the impact of it.
Yes, and I would add to that as well, Leonie. I think once we allow that discourse into like the public sphere, the perhaps the logical thing, the next thing, is to try to reconcile Black women's bodies throughout, the diaspora, even on the continent, Black women's bodies and sexual assault, and what that means. I mean, and we've had bumped against conversations, reparations, and so forth. So I don't know if that'll be the outcome. Certainly, because there have been many intellectuals and activists and lay people and some clergy. People are calling for reparations. But even if that's not the outcome, I'm saying that I think there has to be accountability, right? So as the Me Too movements and the discourse becomes, a mainstream discourse, once it moves from like a marginal discourse into the mainstream, as we are seeing what's happening here, the accountability has to be there for those ways that, Black women's bodies have been used. I mean, the sexual assault, the levels, like, I can't even fathom like the psychic violence that we could begin to unravel when we start to think about and really process what that had to have meant for Black women. And I say Black women, but we are clear that in our 21st century standards, many of them were Black girls, Black female girls, Black girls, young Black females, young Black women, teenagers, adolescents. Once we really start to contend with that, I think that's a necessary next step.
Thank you, Nicole.
Great questions, Kim.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else before we move on?
Well, suppose we have this scenario. I'll give you a quick, brief background. When I went back to school, inadvertently, I became a mentor for some of the younger girls, just because I'm more mature and probably the oldest, the OG of the lecture and of most classes. At lunchtime, we would go down to the lunchroom or maybe the library, and I would sit around with probably 5 or 6, 7 other young ladies of different ethnic backgrounds, Latino, white, and Black. If you want to really get good statistics with a small sample set, which was shocking to me, that this is not this young, being a Black girl and knowing what's going on and have family and friends that have been a victim of sexual assault by own family members, neighbors, uncles, you name it. I thought because this is what I know, that it was, the assault was more on us. Well, give you an example. Michelle and I talked about this in length. Sitting there at the table, this is something that's happening to all girls. There were young white girls there from middle-class families, all walks of life, that had been assaulted and raped and you name it, and abused, physically abused by family members, uncles, brothers. And I was just, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was just taken. It was like you're sitting there talking, and this is a small sample set, and you have 4 girls out of 7 that have been sexually assaulted. It's big, real big. I never knew how huge it was. It's actually much bigger than anyone thinks or knows. So it's huge. I just was so taken by it. I know I sound I'm not naive, but yes, I was naive to those facts. And if I was not in a community college setting where you had girls coming from all walks of life, if I had been in a private school setting, they probably would not have confided in me. They probably wouldn't even have talked to me. I met so many people from all walks of life, and sexual assault on young girls, it's across the board. It's epidemic. It's at an epidemic level. It's just way out there. And once again, these were uncles, cousins, brothers. It's just girls' bodies are not safe, no matter who they are. Little girls' bodies and women's bodies just aren't safe. Even in the confounds of where you would think your body would be safe, which is in your own home. So I just want to share that with you, that it is much larger than I ever thought it was. I knew it was big, but it's much, much bigger than any of us know.
Wow. Powerful, yeah.
Which takes us back to accountability, because a lot of times it's no secret in the home that this is happening.
No.
And to blame the child, because sometimes it's boys also, as opposed to looking at either getting some intervention in the home or making some drastic changes, so that even if someone has been sexually molested, that they can air out and start to come to terms with, what happened to them, because you're holding people accountable, as opposed to pretending that what was said or happened in the dark is the child's fault. That you are too fat, you're too pretty, you're too dark, you're too light, you're too something, whatever you are, that you're too much of. And depending on what day of the week is, it could be the opposite thing that you was yesterday that they're blaming you for. So I don't know. I just think that it is like Venita and everybody's saying, it is rampant.
Yeah. The thing that I want that was really clear, especially my time working in women's shelters, is that these women were coming to shelters and they were coming to a place that's safe. But even in doing so, they often have to give up their main source of income, the place that they live, the community that they were in, all their friends, their family. So even if women do the right thing, it still causes tremendous amounts of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot to give up. It's a lot to give up. And especially with women who have a lot more vulnerability than probably we hold now. It's a lot to give up. So there's a reason why it's part of the reason why people stay or ignore or try to put the focus and the blame somewhere else. Because even if things go right, you have to give up your entire life, your entire identity, just to be safe as a woman.
Right. Which is,
and then how public do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
and that's why, you know, Dolores, you know, that's why Dolores just decided it was easier to let Thandi's father screw Margot because he was helping her a little with the finances. You know, then to prevent that. And it's why Dolores said to Thandi, oh, you know, that happens. We've all been through that. You know, get over it, move on, you know, and go get your pay for turning in girls. You know, so the money, you know, it is often a very key factor in how families respond when they find out, you know, there's been some kind of abuse going on in the home.
I agree with that.
And this is where, you know, last week we were talking about structural, you know, oppression, systemic issues versus personal power to affect some change. But you know, there's this both and aspect to it. So the money, you know, is a problem. The money is a problem, and if we had a different kind of economic system where, you know, where everyone could be assured certain basic necessities, you know, then you wouldn't have the same kind of pressure to let stuff slide, you know, because of the money. At the same time, this is the system that we have. This is the world that we live in. And inside our home, we are responsible and accountable for what's going on. And that's why, you know, Margot had to say in the most devastated tone of voice to Dolores, we let him in our home.
Yeah.
Because they did.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Venita. Oh, sorry.
I just, you know how that this is so upsetting to me. And a lot of times it's not economics because it's some of the women that have acted the way Margot or Dolores acts towards Margot and Thandi are middle to upper middle class women that I met. I know one person in particular that came from a two professional family. So it's also the mental psyche of the people in the home. She had the means to say, I'm taking my child and I'm leaving. Now, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what happened to her, but there are also people that have the means. You know, it's something going on. It's not having the means. It's so complicated. Some have the means. You know, it's just so complicated. It's just, and most I think it's because they don't have the means. However, there's a lot of exceptions to that. There are some that stay there with that and have the means. You know, so it has to be it's something bigger. You know, it's something also. It's so complicated because I know that the person personally that's. I don't know. I don't know. I just would have to cut somebody. and I would just be in jail. You know, and it's so sad, and I guess it depends on the person too. Sometimes people see wrong and do wrong. I see wrong and just never want to see it again. You know what I'm saying? So it's this, and I've seen a lot of stuff. And because I've seen so much, I know that I could never, you know what I'm saying? I know that if I see it, I have to stop it. If I hear it, I have to stop it. I don't know. It's so deep, you know? You can't really pass judgment because it's just so deep. I wonder why everyone's paranoid about homosexuals. That was another question that's been going around in my mind. When Dolores said to Margot that you're more of a devil than the people that are coming to destroy our homes. When, you know, it's, something's going on here. You know, for her to say that, I was just thrown by that line. I was just thrown when she said that. And she said a conviction. You know, because she knows Margot's gay.
She said that to Verdine.
I mean, to Verdine, yes. So it's like, you know, you and she has the thing to say that to something's, it's, and what makes them so feel so strongly about homosexuality? Is it because they broke the Bucks, taking them off the ship? Does it go back that far? And I really, you know, it took me way back there. You know, because that combined with the owners of their bodies at the same time simultaneously putting the Bible in front of them, Deuteronomy 34:7. I mean, you know, I'm just wondering where that comes from. I mean, you know, nothing is worse than homosexuality. But you got Dolores and Margot and Meryl and Ruby and developers. You know what I'm saying? Where does that come from? They're missing everything Verdine has to offer. And she has a lot to offer because she is gay. It's almost like they'd rather be slit, their throat slit and banged in the head with a hammer rather than to have to deal with homosexuality. It's just, it's something sick and twisted about that. I mean, really sick and twisted. They have nothing, they're powerless, they're hungry, they're poor. And someone that's able to offer what they have to them, they are willing to be killed with a sledgehammer than to accept that person, that information, because she's dead. There's something sick about that.
Who's got all that background noise going on?
I don't have
Is that
anything
you,
going
Nicole?
on.
Oh, I am sorry. I did not know. I'm sorry. I thought I had it muted.
Okay.
Venita, after you finish, because I will look out that. Oh, okay. No, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm sorry. I was trying to grab a book that talks about precisely what you're bringing up. So I'm not rushing. I'm sorry. I was digging in my bag trying to grab a book.
No, I want to.
And I'll get in after Nicole. Go ahead, Venita. We missed the last.
Actually, after making that statement, I was hoping someone would be able to give me some insight or give me your opinion on, you know, what you feel. Why do you believe that it is better for them to be killed by someone than to, you know, accept the person as homosexual? However, these are religious people. You know, they believe in the Obey, they believe in witchcraft, they believe in the Bible, they believe in, but the homosexuality is like this blows them off the face of the earth. You know, there's something going on, and I'm just wondering why that deep sea hatred. And on the islands today, in Jamaica, being a homosexual, you might get killed. in 2018. So, Nicole,
Yes,
Venita.
yes. So, yes, Benita. I think you bring up something that's extremely powerful and very relevant. Um, and I'm so sorry, you all. I could just imagine because I was really trying to grab that bag, so I can imagine how much noise. Anyway, um, so M. Jackie Alexander's Pedagogies of Crossing, she talks about that, and she talks about it, looking at the Bahamas or Caribbean nation. So she says that first and foremost, women's sexual agency and erotic autonomy have always been troublesome for the state. They pose a challenge to the ideology of an originary nuclear heterosexual family that perpetuates the fiction that the family is the cornerstone of society. But what's brought to my attention here is when she goes on to say, that of course it's nothing new to want to discipline and punish women in disproportionate ways. But here's the key: much less work has been done. So we need to understand how heterosexualization works within the state apparatus. So how it is paradoxical and heterosexuality once necessary to the state's ability to constitute and imagine itself, and then it becomes at the same time a site of its own instability. So in other words, when we're looking at nations, and especially when we're talking about what some people have called it like pleasure economies, tourism, right? But these nations that sell this kind of this ideal to other individuals. I'm thinking about Jamaica Kincaid's when she talks about the native versus the tourist, right? So when you have these nations, they are always already invested in heterosexual lifestyles, especially, right? Because in order for the state to um, constitute and imagine itself to become this thing, it has to be, a place, a site whereby the union between a man and a woman is prioritized. And so you see these very spaces, here's the irony for me, which I don't understand, because surely people are visiting these places and they are, different sexual orientations, right? It doesn't matter. They're there. It's money. It helps to feed that local economy. Um, but within that place, they need the constituents to be and want to sell this idea that they are heterosexual. And so she delves into but I think, Venita, you are also it's thinking through and thinking about first and foremost, like Margot and Berdine, like what happened with Berdine and the ex. I can't remember her name now. She was earlier in the text, right?
Yeah.
She appeared
Afua.
earlier. What's her name again, Michelle?
Afua, I think it
Afua.
was.
Okay. So the violence that was visited upon their bodies, we could surmise would have been, kind of, I think, a harsher, more exceptional violence had that been two men, um, found or kind of outed, right? But there was still exceptional violence that they had to that was visited upon their body. Had it been two men, I'm not sure. Maybe they would have, no, I don't know, been killed. I mean, she was beaten pretty badly there. So there is that one thing that's going on there, but another, when we think about women who are in control of their sexuality, their sexual autonomy, their abilities to determine what's erotic for them and what's not, there is this repulsion to that we still know exists, like you said, Venita, in the 21st century. Um, so that, I mean, anyway, that's just very, I'm still thinking through that dynamic, as you've said, that these people can be violent, they can be crooked, they can be deceptive, unethical, but as long as they're not homosexual, there's
Right.
some kind of like a redemptive um praxis there, this kind of that they can access, that some in
Mhm.
some fashion they can be redeemed. this
Yes.
this is and this is why books like this, like I wish Audre Lorde knew, like I just to have those kind of love scenes in fiction and a
Mhm.
fictional text. um this is what she understood, and why she had to keep saying, I am your sister regardless of my sexuality, I'm still your sister. I just wish she would have, or I'm hoping that I think it honors her legacy in so many ways. We are having fictional texts with those types of scenes, with that kind of agency, that people are, to out these other ways of loving and being, and not to create a hierarchy, to position one above the other, but to say that they can coexist. So anyway, I just think Dennis-Benn does a fabulous job here as well of honoring Margot. I'm of honoring Audre Lorde. I don't know if she intended to do that, but I certainly see it that way. Okay.
So, I would like us to move on to the next question, if that's all right. I think we're up to question number 3. And thank you, Nicole. My apologies. Thank you very much for finding the text to answer Venita's question, and for all the points that you made that were excellent. Could somebody read question number 3?
I'll read it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Verdine's is the last signature needed to complete the development of the new resort. After combing over the contract to sell her mother's home, she feels like something is wrong. She discovered her property is being stolen from her for less than its value, and then she discovers her lover stands to benefit from the situation. A, what options do you see available for Verdine to take and why? And B, is there any situation where you might work things out with Margot?
That's if you're Verdine.
If you're Verdine. Yeah. I don't know. I have a real hard time trusting Margot at this point. After Margot ghosted Verdine, she came back and she was apologetic, and that's when Verdine was, slapping her on the back, and they had this whole emotional scene. And Verdine let her back into her life, which I thought was a mistake at that point. However, you know, however, I could understand it because, you know, Margot did appear at that point to be genuinely apologetic and genuinely being accountable for her behavior. One of the problems that I tend to have with people is when folk do me wrong.
As I'm saying. No, go ahead, girl. You get gone.
They usually want to act like nothing happened. You know, like it just didn't happen. Like, you know, I believe the reason that Venita and I have been friends for so long is because when we're angry with each other, we talk about it, and we scream and yell at each other, and we acknowledge what, you know, all right, you know, I didn't mean it that way, or we apologize. But neither one of us has that tendency to say, I don't know what you're talking about. That didn't happen. But with other people, I get that a lot. I don't know what you're talking about. That didn't happen. So I like the fact that when Margot showed up back into Verdine's life, she was acknowledging, yeah, I ghosted you, you know, and yeah, I was wrong. And, you know, so in that kind of situation, I can see how you can move on with somebody. But this business of betraying her related to the contract, the thing about that for me is that, you know how Margot was saying she had never seen this business side of Verdine. Yes. Mm-hmm. And she, you know, had no idea that this was going to be a stumbling block to her plans. Mm-hmm. I think that there are certain situations that reveal different aspects of people's character that no matter how long you've known them, they don't even know that piece of their character. Mm-hmm. It's the situation that brings it out. And so for me, Margot didn't know Verdine's business side, but Verdine didn't know Margot's manipulative side. And so now that she's had an opportunity to see it, mm-hmm. I'm with Margot. What is it? Was it Maya Angelou? People will show you who they are, believe them.
Mm-hmm. So. Thanks, Michelle. I think for me there's no coming back. I cannot see being so lonely and so desperate in terms of Verdine that you hide up in that house and pray that Margot comes by, but you never go spend the night in the hotel and get a little bit of an idea of who it is you are banking your life on. And so I felt sad when we read this part. I wasn't surprised that this was who Margot was turning into, because she's also selling out everybody in Riverbank, not just Verdine. So it's just sad, but I think Verdine has a lot of options now. Once somebody say you the last signature, cha-ching, I would say, oh really now? Okay, all right. This sounds pretty good to me. I'm sitting pretty. So that's what I would lawyer up. I may, go into Kingston and get me a couple of lawyers too. I think that Verdine is in a real good spot, and I think that she could strangle Margot with her negotiations, just to kind of make it even more bittersweet for Margot. to kind of say, oh, run back and tell your boss that this property is going to cost you more than all the other properties combined. And let them know that you were in my bed too.
Oh. I can't turn my back on you, Kim. I don't know what you do. It was all in there. You hear that, Nicole?
Yeah. That's a woman's scorn. I don't know.
Absolutely.
May not make it to the end of this book.
Yeah, Kim did that.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't Verdine. I try to be objective about her, but I just don't feel her. She's just so pitiful. Maybe I don't do pitiful. Maybe I don't do it. You know, I'm not good at pitiful. You know, I'm good at real stuff. You know, because Margot, I would have even blinked. I would have got rid of her ghost me. That'll be your last ghost, because it's just, I can love you now and not love you later if you do something mean to me. I can just like that. So she's just so pitiful. I mean, who the hell does that? I mean, that much love in the world. But she's broken and she's desperate because her behavior shows that she's very desperate. It's beyond love for her. It's this desperation. She has nothing.
Yeah.
And Margot knows that Margot can go down there and be with a man down at the hotel. She can be with a woman down at the hotel. She can be with a Fonzo. Verdine has no out. It just feels like that's just her world. Looking at her mama's pictures, drinking out the teapot, and waiting for Margot to come by. I mean, really? You know, I don't know. I don't feel Verdine. I try to feel bad for her, but I just don't. She just gets on my nerves.
Does that also speak to like profit, how profitable it is, especially for women?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's extended to men as much, but the profitability, it's profitable for women to be bisexual or bi-curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is an economy exists for them, for this desire for, you know, a woman who is bisexual. And so I think it allows us to see how that interplay, that Margot as a bisexual woman is still very much so desired, and she can earn, you know, that profit is hers, as she could access that as a result of that. But that's that fluidity. But with Verdine's sexual orientation being fixed, right, and then being outside of what's considered desirable. So what she gets is locked out and excluded, and outside of this economy and political economy. So it's so interesting to me how that occurs. And it's so very interesting that at the beginning of the text, Verdine seems to have so much more agency.
Yes.
Right? It speaks to, I think, what they call the psychology of chance encounters, that sometimes chance encounters rob you of, you know, everything, that it takes time to recover from those types of encounters. And whereas, you know, I mean, to me, I'm just gonna be honest, Dennis-Benn, you know, she put forth a good, powerful love scene between the two of them.
Did she?
So you know, so Venita, I'm almost thinking like able to get in there and get her skills up and really learn how to be a woman.
But now somebody's got to stand up for Verdine.
No, they don't. Michelle. You stand up.
Go ahead, Michelle.
What broke Verdine, Michelle? What did it?
I think that when Verdine walked into Dino's bar with her head held high and said she was not going to be turned around, that she was beginning to recover and reclaim her agency. You know, Margot took her down like love has a way of taking us down. But I think she's going to find her footing again.
I hope she does. I'm not saying I wish her well. I'm saying right now.
I anticipate a book 2.
It better be.
And one of the things that I think is going to happen in book 2, Verdine is going to remember this little betrayal. See?
I think she's going to snap out of it. I really do believe she's going to snap out. She's very intelligent. She's an attractive woman. And we know that she did have agency. I think right now she just, with the mother thing going, the guilt going on, the this going on, and all the, gentrification going, it's a lot on her. She's grieving too. But, and I hope she does recover. I'm really out there for her. But right now she, and I was happy when she went to the bar. I thought, well, okay, she's coming back alive. She's standing for something. Okay, go ahead, girl. Get rid of Margot. Keep it moving. Fight for your house. Although it's a losing battle probably for her at this point, but still, I wish her the best. But she's not that naive. Margot has her outlets. Verdine has nothing. That's why she's so codependent. She has nothing. Margot God that she's interacting with people all the time. She got plenty of sex going on when she wanted, money. Verdine is just by herself. Margot is just too much for Verdine.
What I'd like to do is to move us off of Verdine, and hopefully there's a book 2. And if somebody could read question 4, and then maybe 2 people can respond to it, and then we'll slip in the last question.
Okay, I'll read it.
Oh, thank you.
We are officially informing you. Oh, this is a letter that was handed to Dolores and Thandi. Dear resident, we are officially informing you of the development of brand new hotel resort on this property and hope that you will cooperate with us. We kindly ask that you vacate the premises by August 1st. The owner of this property, Mr. Donovan Sterling, has sold us the right to build our hotel resort here. Failure to vacate by request date will result in forceful evacuation. Thank you for your cooperation.
Could you read the 3 bullet points also, Venita?
Yeah, I was just absorbing that letter.
Oh, okay.
If you read between the lines, what is this letter saying to the residents? B, when a community is displaced, what are some of the not so obvious casualties of uprooting families, relationships, and memories? C, letters like this one are being given to poor and brown people all over the world. What might be done to slow down the cancerous hunger for land and greed of big business and save some of our communities? I'll let someone else take that on home.
Thank you, Venita.
Well, I don't know about between the lines, but in the lines, where it says the owner of this property has sold us the right. I think that's, that is pretty much the way gentrification is happening. There's some cases where the state takes ownership of land and, does what it wants. But, for the most part, these are homeowners that are being offered sums of money, good sums of money or not good sums of money, but money. And, and people decide to sell. And so, and so to me, that down on letter C, what might be done to slow the cancerous hunger? People could decide that they're not going to sell. But capitalism is indeed cancerous, and so it just gets more and more voracious, and it has a long-term view, long game. So whether you sell or don't sell, whether they get it, this year, next year, or 10 years down the road, there's that. But in the short term, if you're a homeowner, then you have some ability to hold on.
I think for me, and thank you, Michelle. The letter for me, it comes off like, "Hi, buddy. This good thing is happening. Sterling has sold the property to us, and you have until August 1st to vacate." It sounds like change dance partners when the letter knows they have nowhere to go. If they had any money, they wouldn't be where they are. And there's this little bit of a threat that's implied that you don't want us to do to you. So whatever you need to do to be out by August 1st. And I'm not sure what date they're getting this letter. But I don't know if they're getting a week's notice or a month's notice. But it just sounds like all of their stuff will be crushed by the bulldozers. And so they could stay on the couch or not, but the house is going down on August 2nd. And so it's this friendly, crappy tone. But at the end of the day, there is definitely a threat there. And the question that I'm starting to feel here is gentrification has taken away so much, and it's not things you notice until 3-4 years after they're gone. It's just so many casualties of people who used to live on the block that we'll never see again, and you don't know that you'll never see them again the last time you saw them. It's just like all of a sudden we moved, the neighborhood moved, but we didn't. And there are economic things that I don't think, especially people of color, are going to recover from. Like I had this whole army of Black men who did certain things on the block. You had your electrician guy, there was the plumber guy, there was this guy, that guy, and they can't make ends meet anymore because they don't have those clientels who would use their work, and sometimes they may not have all the licenses and things like that. So it's just this trickle down thing where people are losing jobs and losing livelihoods for their families, and that means even more people are displaced. And let us not talk about how if you are among the lucky ones and you own your home, every time they sell a house next to you or near you for these big dollars, your house is treated the same way. And so that your taxes go up and your insurance and all your bills. And so you find a lot of seniors here on this block, especially, that are house poor. And all they have to do is not pay their taxes a couple of times. Somebody comes and buys the taxes, and then they own the house. And so it's just a hardship. It's like a war without a bullet. Like the devastation is unbelievable. And hopefully the people who see it come and pull together and find ways, bigger than Facebook to stay together. So that's what I was thinking, some of that for that question. Anybody else? So we can move to question 5 and finish up. Has anybody not read? Nicole, have you read?
I'll read. I'll read question 5.
Oh, thank you.
Excuse me. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. When the book opened, Thandi's only care was passing her examinations and exploring the possibility of becoming an artist. What are some of the struggles that Thandi has had to face, and what big sister advice do you have for her? As she must now attempt to navigate a space where the comfort of her world is crumbling and the bold new world is not yet on the horizon. It's a very good question.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so I think at this point, the best, like big sister kind of advice that I would give Thandi is to just hold on. Hold on. And one of my mentors once told me that sometimes, we sit in the seat of the unknown and it's uncomfortable, but ultimately and you figure out life for yourself. Because what Thandi is going to realize, if she just keeps living, is that what she needs, is I dare not say the infrastructure should support, because it should. I'm not taking away from the infrastructure. Infrastructure should support her as well. But that which she needs, she already possesses. And then, just keep going, just keep living. Make some mistakes, grow, learn through it. And ultimately, keep evolving into the woman that she wishes to become, not the woman that Dolores wants her to become, or the woman that Margot wants her to come. And then someday she gets to 40 and baby, it's like whatever. It's it's just hey. It's a freedom. All
Right.
right, I'm passing the torch.
Who's next?
As a big sister, I would advise Thandi to, and I agree with Nicole, but I would advise Thandi to make plans in the process of growing and making mistakes. Still to make plans, still to keep her passion, and let the invisible hand, because I believe in the visible hand. I believe if you stick to what you love in the face of anything that may want to hold you back, if you make a plan and let the invisible hand push you forward, it'll work. It will work. But she needs to make plans. She needs to hone her skill. She needs to fulfill her passion. She needs to still do what she wants to do, regardless. And she'll be okay. She'll be okay. Hold on to herself. She'll be fine. Don't let anybody take that.
Well, I would tell Thandi what her big sister Margot told her, which is you're beautiful, just as you are.
That's right. There has to be a book 2. There has to be a book 2. Number 2. We have to know.
I agree, Venita. I agree. I want to see Bardine find and meet a beautiful person
Yes.
who is deserving of her
Yes.
love. I want to see Margot get you know, I mean, she's already badass and a boss. So I do want to see her get your empire and you know, sit through that. And then I see something happening with Dolores. And I want to see where, you know, it's just a slight sign of tenderness every now and then. I want to see how that pans out.
And Charles, I need to know what becomes of Charles. Seems like he's the only man, and a young one at that. Knowing, having the struggles that he's had, and still trying to be a man and do his duty. I want to see what happens to him. I hope good things happen to Charles. I really do. Chances are, but I hope so.
Did we lose Kim?
Yeah, I think we did. I don't know what happened.
Oh no. Georgette, what would you tell Thandi?
Well, I think you guys all had great advice. But you know, it's hard to tell a young person anything. Look, it's hard to tell old people stuff because we think we know it all.
I like that, you know, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, she fell in love. Now she thinks Charles is her world, but of course she's lost her world because, you know, when you get kicked out of where you live, you're grasping on to that next thing. But who's there to tell her that, you know, you can be a doctor and an artist at the same time? People have done stuff like this before. So, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can do it. You can do it all. You don't have to be who your sister is. You don't have to be who your mother is. You can be who you are. You can find out who you are, because that's what she doesn't know right now.
Right.
Just who she is. So,
and unless she gets away from there, she will never know who she is.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is
so that might be the advice.
I think
you need to get out of here.
Think about a ticket. Save for the ticket. Wherever the ticket's going to take you, save for the ticket.
Yes.
Leonie, what would you advise Thandi?
Follow her heart, figure it out. Screw up, follow your heart, figure it out again. Screw up, follow your heart, figure it out again. Screw up.
Right.
Oh,
I like that, Leonie.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. All right, women. We lost our moderator, but Kim, thank you very much for these really very thoughtful questions.
Fabulous job. She did a great job.
Yes, she did.
That caused us to dig deep. Got 1 week left. And so, now Kim's not here. At some point, I keep saying when all of us are here, like we just were a few minutes ago, I want to decide whether or not we want to schedule a private session, you know, just for ourselves after we finish this book. So you all help me remember to get that done next week. Okay.
Ask Nicole, because I'm an OG like you, Michelle. Nicole.
Well, then.
Okay.
Make sure Leonie next week.
Yeah, Leonie's going to be running the meeting, so you know, try to help us with that, Leonie. And I will see you all next week reading our story together. Have
All
a good break.
right.
Good night. Good night,
Okay.
Michelle. Good night,
Good
Leonie. Good
night.
night,
Bye.
Good
Michelle. Good
night.
night,
Bye.
Nicole.
Have a good week.
Bye. Bye, you all. Bye. Bye. Bye, Michelle.
Bye. Bye.